Hi, I'm Rachel Losser, and you're listening to Big Project Energy. In this week's bonus episode, I was really excited to talk about what even is a project and how the heck do you start a project or initiate a project. So let's get into it and let's talk about it. So first things first, by the sort of textbook definition of a project, it's basically a temporary initiative. So meaning there's a start and an end to create value, a product, or a result. And so there's a lot of micro projects happening all the time in an organization. And when it comes to some of the bigger projects or things where, you'd want a team like mine to come in and lead, we're looking for some like very specific goals and a very specific objective and end point. So that could be solve this problem, implement this system, develop this product, right? So we have to have an objective. Once we get into sort of standard operating procedures or just a day-to-day and there's really no end, we've probably moved away from a project and we're probably just in ongoing operations at that point. So as we're thinking about actually initiating a project, which is, I think, a challenge for a lot of people, is okay, I know I have to do this thing, but how the heck do I even start? The way that I think about this is very basic. We can kind of break it down into three very easy steps. The first piece is you have to get buy-in. You have to get approval or just decide that this project is happening and very clearly define what is the thing that we're trying to achieve. So then the next piece is I need to figure out who do I need to actually be able to do this project? Do we have the expertise in-house? Do we need to go out and find someone? Do we need to run like a more serious vendor selection process, right? And that could even be part of the project activities. Is one of the things we have to do is pick a vendor. So when I'm thinking about assigning a team or dealing with my stakeholders, now a stakeholder is anyone who has any interest in this project, right? When I'm thinking about assigning a team that is the working team that I'm going to be working with regularly, I'm usually trying to think about, okay, what is the structure, right? Who are the people that I need to keep informed? Who are the people that are going to be a part of what I call the core team or the folks that I'm working with day to day? And then who else needs to be notified or pulled in at various occasions? So I'm going to literally just sit down and document all of that and try to write down as much as I can in terms of who the key players are so that I can manage them appropriately. So the first thing, I'm going to get the buy-in. I'm going to assign who the project team is. And then the third thing I'm going to do is just start and get a cadence stood up. So my favorite way to just kind of push something into starting is to hold a kickoff meeting and then continue to have a regular meeting on the calendar so that we know that we're going to revisit this topic and revisit this project. A very easy way to think about this is if you don't have a playbook for this, you could just meet weekly and just use that as a starting point. And if you're finding that to be not enough or too much, you can just adjust. So you could meet every other day. You could meet every 2 weeks. It just depends on how important is this, how many people are involved, how quickly do we need to move, how much changes on the day to day, right? If I'm going to a meeting and I realize that not much has changed and we're not getting a lot of value out of this, then I'm going to go ahead and change that. So that's really it. A project is a temporary initiative, and you can initiate it by deciding that it needs to be done or getting the right people to buy into that, setting up the team, and then just going forward and getting a regular cadence in place. Okay, so in the last bonus episode, we talked a little bit about PM basics, or what I consider to be the holy grail, activities that you must do as a PM. And those things are one source of truth for action items, meeting notes after every meeting that folks can reference, and also having a timeline. Now, when I'm thinking about initiating a project, as much of that as I can have nailed down in advance is going to be really helpful. So then when I'm talking to the team, I am also explaining to them how the project is going to operate. So when I'm setting up and saying, hey, we're going to have this kickoff meeting, and in this meeting, I'll go ahead and I'll tell them we have one source of truth for action items. Here's where it is. Here's the link. And I'll literally spend the time to show them I might even in that meeting have everybody double check that they have access, right? And just make the source of truth even more accessible. Same thing for meeting notes. I'll say, hey, here's the folder where I'm going to put all the meeting notes. They're going to be in this format and they're going to be right here where you can find them. And again, I'll give the link. So I'm going to literally spend the time to say, hey, I've set up this structure and I'm going to explain it to you so that we can have productive conversation in future meetings and everyone knows what to expect. If you've never run a project before, this can be extremely overwhelming. You think of all these things that you have to do, all these different deliverables that you have to pull together. And I would say just start with this known playbook and just start by having things that are organized and in place where everyone can reference, and you'll evolve your style over time. Okay, I know this topic of what makes a project can be a little bit confusing. So I asked my team to help me write a couple of examples. And these are great, I think, illustrative examples for let's play project or not project. Okay, so first and foremost, processing payroll every 2 weeks. Not a project. That's something that's reoccurring operational work. There's not a start or an end. That's just something that's ongoing. So not a project. But implementing a brand new payroll system, now that's a project. Responding to daily customer tickets, not a project. But coming up with a process to improve how we respond to tickets, and then at the end of that process, maybe monitoring a few to make sure that the objective that we took on actually happened. Now that's a project, right? Moving office locations, that could be a project. Implementing a new system, designing a new product. Really anything could be a new project as long as we have a clear objective and there's an end. If you have any suggestions for topics for future bonus episodes, we're going to be covering a lot of PM tools and techniques, PM basics, and really helping to break down some of the topics that you've heard about in some of our guest conversations. So if you have any suggestions, please shoot us an email. Our email's in the links and show notes on the episode. And we look forward to continuing to kind of unpack some of these topics with you in the future.